Nobody had any information. There was no information. It was the Wild West. He gives me my territory. He had the territory system before you. He says, your territory is 3rd Avenue in the 40s. I said, great, now what do I do with that? He says, what you do is you got to go get information. You have to find out who the tenants in the building are, when their leases expire, and try to convince them that you should represent them.
Now, here's a lesson for the younger folks in the crowd, that the way office leasing canvassing used to take place. Every building today has such high security. You need to basically show your passport to get in and see a client in a new building today. But what was it like back in those days, though? What was canvassing like in the 80s?
So I walk into the building. I get into there are a bunch of guys standing in the lobby, and I walk into the elevator with these bunch of guys.
And no security, so you just walk right to the elevator?
Yes. They figured out later in life that terrorists don't have a license. Because that's why they ask for a license before they allow you in a building. But in those days, they didn't think that. So I walk into the elevator with a bunch of guys. There's been 6 of us walking into the elevator. And I was one of the first ones in. So I'm standing on the back wall, and I'm waiting for the first guy to push a button. And everybody's looking at everybody else. And I realized very quickly, we were all leasing brokers. All of us were leasing brokers. Every single one of us was a leasing broker. So I pushed a button, someone else, because I don't want to go to the floor that he's going to. He doesn't want to go to the floor that I'm going to, and so on and so forth. I don't know. I did this for a short while, and I said, there's got to be a better way. I got to figure out a better way. This isn't the way to do it. So and we used to get Real Estate Weekly, which has been around forever. Unfortunately, it isn't any longer, and certainly in print. And we used to get Real Estate Weekly, and Real Estate Weekly in the back had the announcements of leases that had been signed.
Yeah, Real Estate Weekly back in the day in the 80s, it was the publication. Yes. It was the real deal of its day. The real deal today is the publication that folks look at, or Commercial Observer. But
yes,
in those days, Real Estate Weekly was...
That was it.
Or the classified section of the New York Times. Those are your only options.
So the classified section of the New York Times is where you advertise your space for rent. In the back of the Real Deal, it's where brokers... the Real Estate Weekly is where brokers announced that they represented this and this tenant at this and this building, and they signed the lease for how many years, right? So I said to myself, hold on a second. If I go back long enough, I start reading through Real Estate Weekly, I will find a deal that was signed 9 years ago, and it was a 10-year lease, and that lease would be coming up in the next year. And I'll just go directly to that tenant and say, hey, I know your lease is coming up at this and this point, and I'd like to represent you. And that was my way of canvassing in those days. It worked for a while. It worked. The method worked. I did not enjoy the leasing. I didn't feel, I could have been selling copy machines. I could have been selling anything. I liked real estate because I liked the intricacies of real estate. I liked understanding why this block is different than that block, how the zoning makes a difference, how setbacks, and all the various things that you have to know in every different real estate food group. You have to learn about what makes that different. What do I need to know to succeed? You didn't need to know that as a leasing broker. You had to know basically what was available and what was the market per square foot and sell it.